koje su ukradene je Pikaso, glava konja 1962. godine i bokal i vaza 1944. godine. Te slike bile su izložene u kulturnom centru Zedam u jednom malom gradiću koji se zove Pfäffikon, blizu Ciriha. A slike su inače pripadale Sprengler muzeju iz Hanovera koji je za ovu priliku pozajmio te slike za ovu izložbu. I tako su slike nestale. Gospodina Richarda Ellisa srela sam već nekoliko puta.
The myth that people steal particularly well-known, valuable works of art to put into a private collection, I have never ever substantiated. Do the dealers steal? I would say not in fine art.
A sada sam došla ovde u London jer je njegovo ime vezano za otkriće slike Pikasa. I kakva slučajnost, ovde vidite u Kristiju nalazimo veliku izložbu Pikasove keramike. Mr. Ellis, was it one of the routine things you did with Picasso painting in Serbia?
You could say it was routine as much as I was asked to investigate the theft, and that's, if you like, my routine business.
How long are you investigating this region?
Well, I mean, I've been associated with Serbia since about 2000, so I mean, I've had contacts there over the last 12 years. On the particular Picasso investigation, I was visiting Serbia regularly between 2008 and 2011.
Dobila sam poverenje gospodina Richarda Ellisa, koji me je primio u jednom od svojih laboratorija gde se vrši identifikacija ukradenog predmeta. U Londonu nisam mogla da snimam ništa okolo, nema adrese, kao u nekom filmu. Našla sam se sa ljudima i oni su me odveli na ovo mesto koje vam pokazujem. How come you came to the point that the paintings are in Serbia?
Well, you have to go back to the time when the paintings were stolen. They were on loan to a cultural centre near Zurich, in Pfäffikon, on Lake Zurich. And they were stolen from there in February of 2008. The insurers, who were now effectively liable to pay out obviously a considerable sum of money on the loss of these paintings, asked me, as a private investigator specialising in art theft, asked me to investigate the matter with a view to recovering the paintings on their behalf. So I set about that, and if you like, all roads didn't lead to Rome, they led. I've been very specialised in art crime for over a quarter of a century, so over 25 years. So I've amassed quite a lot of contacts in that time, and it's all about your contacts and using your contacts. So I initiated my investigation. I went to Switzerland. I spoke to people there. The information that came back from that was that this was a Serb orchestrated crime. And through a Serbian contact that I had made many years ago, when I was approached to help with the Avar treasure that was stolen or lost in Serbia, I retained that contact and I spoke to him. I went to Serbia and we began to call on people and to ask questions about the theft of the artwork from Switzerland. And at the time, there was a lot of other artwork that was being stolen, not just in Switzerland, but all over Western Europe. And the indications were that this was organised by groups of Serbs who were travelling through Europe looking for work, meeting up with other Serb contacts that they had, and although this wasn't a organized group of criminals that were targeting artwork or targeting other commodities, it was a very loosely grouped body of Serbs who would meet each other, meet other Serbs who were resident in these countries. They would glean information, and they would then set about stealing some of these objects, which would be taken back into the Balkan regions, particularly into Serbia and Macedonia.
Slike i umetnički predmeti se ne kradu tek tako. Uvek postoji naručilac koji se razume u umetnost i odabere otprilike slike za koje tržište, koje on poznaje zainteresovano, nađu čoveka koji ume to da uradi. Kažu da mora da bude vrlo dobar lopov. I onda, kada ukrade tu sliku i kada se ona proda, on dobije negde od 0,5% do 2% najviše.
Those thieves, they were not art lovers or art dealers.
Very few art thieves are art lovers. They steal a commodity which they know from reading the newspapers and reading about the latest sale at Sotheby's or at Christie's when a record price has been achieved for a Monet or a Picasso, or whatever the artist is. They know that these are objects of value. They probably don't know, and this is the difference between a thief and an art thief, is what to do with that commodity. How do you move it? How do you capitalize on what you have stolen? It's very easy. If you steal cash, obviously you can go out and spend it. If you steal electrical goods or jewelry, it's much easier to put that into a second-hand market. With identifiable works of art, it becomes much harder. And you have to have particular types of handlers that will know how to utilize art.
Have they been hired by somebody to steal those paintings from Switzerland?
No.
They just realized it's a money,
think so.
right?
I think this was, and I still to this day, I don't know who actually stole them. But I know that there was a bar near to Zurich, between Zurich and Pfaffikon, that was frequented by Serbs who were visiting Switzerland or living in Switzerland at the time, and this was, if you like, their watering hole. And you see this with what in England we refer to as an expat community. The Englishmen abroad will tend to focus on a bar where they all go and meet and they chat and they can all talk in English and they can talk about home, and it's a very sociable place. And it's at bars like that, and the Space Bar near Zurich became the focal point of Serbian activity. And so you could go there, you would meet other Serbs, and it was there that the planning of a number of these crimes that were committed in and around Zurich.
What do you mean you don't know who in fact did steal the paintings? What do you mean by that?
I don't know who they are, I don't know their names. You're the first member of the Serbian press that I have spoken to about the recovery of these Picasso paintings. So if there were any names printed or broadcast, they're not names that have come from me, because I don't know who actually stole the paintings.
You don't?
No, and as far as I'm aware, I don't think anybody has actually been arrested for the theft in Switzerland of the Picasso paintings.
This is the situation.
Yeah. You are not thinking of the Cezanne and that was recently recovered in Serbia, because people have been arrested in connection with that painting. Mm-hmm. But with the Picassos, no.
Srbija i okolne zemlje se nažalost smatraju sigurnim zemljama za čuvanje ukradenih umetničkih predmeta. Za prenos ukradenih slika preko granice najčešće se koriste diplomatske pošiljke koje ne podližu carinjenju, tako da lopov u igru uvlači i strane diplomate iz siromašnih zemalja koji su lako potkupljivi.
And the big intrigue that you do have some contacts in Serbia which were working for you.
Of course.
Professionally.
These are contacts, obviously my initial contacts, I say, go back to a meeting in London in, I think about 2002, when I was working with the Invaluable Group and running the database for stolen art, and that's where I was approached about the Blago. I went out to Serbia on another occasion because we were in discussion about creating a bespoke data system to record objects of cultural heritage within Kosovo, because there was concern that they might be lost.
Those people are working undercover, or the people, they know what they are doing?
If you're working undercover, it indicates that you are pretending to be something that you're not, that you don't want people to know what you're doing. The contacts I have in Serbia are, if you like, ordinary people. They are not members of a law enforcement agency. They are not working undercover. They are living their lives openly and freely in Serbia. And because of that, they meet people and they hear things and they can talk to people. And this is what learning about crime is all about. The spring of last year, when they were able to read to me what was on the back of those paintings. And when I heard that, I knew we were now looking at the real thing.
What was written behind the painting?
This was information that was on the back, labels about the provenance of the paintings.
So you knew this is it?
I knew that was there, and at the time of the theft, we had withheld that information. It had not been made public, so that we would be able to authenticate, just as we did, that I would be able to authenticate that these were the actual Picasso paintings we were seeking. Because there are an awful lot. Forged Picassos, forged Miros, forged Degas, and I had been shown an awful lot of forged works of art in Serbia.
Where? In Serbia?
Sure. These are some of the best Miro fakes I've ever seen. And these are the kind of artwork which is being circulated in Serbia together with the genuine article. How would I investigate? How have I always investigated crime from my earliest days as a detective in the police? I went out and talked to people. I'd visit bars and clubs, and you get to talk to people. You get relationships going, and then they start talking more freely to you. And the one thing I never, ever do, and particularly when I'm working abroad, such as when I'm in Serbia, I never to pretend to be anybody I'm not.
And who are you?
I have a certain profile.
Who are you, Mr. Ellis?
Who am I?
Yes.
I am a retired police officer. I served 30 years in the police in London, which included 11 years at Scotland Yard, where I formed the Art and Antiques Unit in 1989 and worked on that until my retirement in 1999. Point where we were able to know that within a period of a week, the Picasso paintings would be returned to me. And I, working with the insurers, ensured that the director of the museum, the Sprengel Museum, would also come to Serbia with me. I collected the director of the Sprengel Museum from Belgrade Airport. I then drove into Belgrade. We had a meeting with people, my guys, people that they worked with. And I was then driven with Ulrich Krempel, the director of the Sprengel Museum, out of Belgrade down to Kruševac. We were taken there to a hotel, and in the hotel room, wrapped in material, were the two Picasso paintings.
Who brought it to the hotel room?
I don't know. I was taken to the hotel room where the paintings were, waiting for. And that was the moment of recovery. They were authenticated, and then Ulrich and I wrapped those paintings so that they were safe to travel. We didn't want to damage them in transit, and I had arranged, I'd simply taken security boxes at a bank in Belgrade, and we drove to Belgrade and secured the paintings.
Okay.
When the press saw the paintings,
yes,
was 2 or 3 weeks later, when I then came back to Belgrade. I met with the Serb police, with the Swiss prosecutor.
The glory of discovery went where then?
Well, if there was glory, I don't know. I was still in Belgrade when the Minister of Culture announced that the Serbian police had recovered the pictures, so I guess you could say there was certain glory there. I was contacted within 24 hours of actually securing those pictures by the Swiss media. So clearly the Swiss had leaked this to the media, that the pictures were recovered. And I know that the Swiss prosecutor, on returning to Switzerland after we'd been in Belgrade, announced to the Swiss media that the Swiss had recovered the pictures. Good luck to them. So I don't seek publicity. I don't go out of my way to tell the media, hey, I'm going to France next week, or I'm going to Switzerland, or I'm going to Serbia. I don't need people to know what I'm doing. I'm a very private person, and that's the way that I have to operate. And this is why, after the recovery of the pictures, in fact, it was agreed between the Swiss prosecutors, the Serb prosecutors, and the director of the Sprengel Museum, the owner of, if like the owners of the pictures, that we would say nothing to the media. And I continued to do that because I don't particularly need for people to know all about me in that way. For me, the fact that I was successful, that I was able to recover these pictures and return them to the museum who owned them on behalf of the insurers, they're the people who need to know what I do and how I do it. Because they'll use me again. If you like, I'm a pensioner because I have a police pension. But as that police officer, I developed a particular expertise in the investigation and the recovery of stolen art and antiques and cultural property on an international basis. And I was able to take that into the private sector. And I've been able to start my own company working with, experts in this field and able to deliver over and above what, certainly what law enforcement agents can do, because I'm free to travel and I'm free to meet people and talk to people, which is how I learn about stolen property. We provide a lot of very specialised services to the art collecting community. We're here in the laboratory of Art Access. This is the most advanced laboratory in the world when you come to looking at and looking behind painting on canvas or on wood or whatever it is, and analysing the pigments and authenticating these works of art.
This is infrared imaging, and we are now scanning a painting for a client. And here you can see a small, very small part of this painting. We do infrared to see under drawings and what's called pentimenti, which is changes in the image or the painting.
What did you discover on this one? Is it real?
It's too early to say because we just started the work. The client thinks it might be a painting by Rubens.
Oh.
And that is what we are trying to find out, whether this is a painting from Rubens or not.
This is the laboratory. Nicholas Eastaugh here at this laboratory was the man who first identified that the Jäger's collection in Germany was part of a massive art fraud, and these pictures had been forged. And he identified it here scientifically by showing that a pigment that was used was actually not available when the picture was supposed to have been painted.
This forger has sold paintings for almost 30 million euros, and all these paintings went through all the connoisseurs and specialists and was sold through major dealers and auction houses. And we are trying to avoid this kind of problems. This is a painting that comes from a client that he wants to have authenticated. We take very tiny little samples. We put these samples onto what we call the stub. You can see that it's divided into sections and there is small spots of color along the side, yes?
Yes.
Can you see them?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we put this into to our instruments in the laboratory, and we analyze them and find the exact chemical composition of this.
I heard that in Russia they can make such a beautiful fakes that even the laboratories having difficulties to identify. For example, if something is a Fabergé or something is a painting from that they can produce even the paint and the material from that period. Is it true?
Well,
I heard that.
I won't say it's impossible, but it is very difficult, and the faker needs to be extremely skillful in that particular artist, what kind of material this artist actually used, because there is so many ways of actually finding out. Yeah. If you take a material like lead white, and you can always mix lead white today, but today you will find traces of titanium and things like that, and you can also use you can go in and look at the isotopes to find out the source of the lead. So I would say it's very difficult. The clever thing with this, the fakers today, the really good fakers today, is that they don't only fake the painting, they also fake the story. Why this painting, where this painting source. So they put up the history, they build up a whole story around this painting. And in contemporary art, the story is one of the most important things. Art history. If you go to dealers, they all goes on provenance. If the provenance is nice, it's good. And this is what they did. You know, they built up a story and they made the paintings. And because you have, in old exhibition catalogs, there wasn't images. It was only titles. So you can actually go back to catalogs, look at titles, sizes maybe, because they have it's a big lack of information in old exhibition catalogs.
Do you know what I heard? Some people which are dealing with art, they usually say, when you have a very precious painting and somebody comes to you and they say, oh, it would be lovely that you exhibit this painting. We are going to put it on exhibition and we are going to write down that this is from the private collection. This bust your ego and the family name, etc. The advice is never let any painting out of your view because it could be faked.
Yes. Theoretically, it can. Yes. And that's where good imaging, high resolution imaging, come to, you know, is a good tool for avoiding that kind of faking, because if you do high resolution imaging, there will be so much details in the image that it cannot be faked.
I was sent this picture by somebody else that I know in Serbia, in Belgrade, who was being offered this painting. And they thought it was a genuine Degas. Now, if you look at that, it's not even in the style of Degas. No. There are an awful lot of forgeries, there are an awful lot of people that think they're going to make money by selling rubbish. And they do that because some people will buy rubbish thinking it's the real thing.
But Mr. Ellis, there is another thing. If the expert in my country signs something and says it's real, and the expert is having a name, people would believe him.
Well, they might well, but that's why ultimately collectors and so on will come here to this laboratory and have the picture looked at scientifically. I dealt with a very big art forgery on one occasion while I was at Scotland Yard. The artist painted entirely in acrylic, household paint. And his works were sufficiently good to fool a lot of art experts. Had they been looked at scientifically, they would have known straight away that these were fakes. And the man that painted them, a man called John Myatt, today runs his own gallery, and it's called Genuine Fakes.
Painting portraits is my passion. I'm John Myatt, an artist, and I've been commissioned to paint famous people. But these will be no ordinary portraits. And I'm no ordinary painter. I used to be an art forger. I was jailed for forging over 200 paintings, a crime that rocked the art world. And I paid the price for it. I did my time, and now I make an honest living painting legitimate fakes in the style of famous artists. I'm copying the great masters to create my celebrity portraits. Today my sitter is the comedy genius, John Cleese. Your two paintings, here we go. Painting number 1 and painting number 2.
Very good. Oh, how interesting.
When I was in the police at Scotland Yard, if I wanted to go to these other countries, I had to submit reports, I had to seek agreement of those countries I was going to visit. Sometimes they actually came to us and said, can you help? And we would say yes, but you had to have their agreement. There had to be what they call letters rogatory, which provide, in Serbia, the prosecutor would have to say, yes, you the French, you the Swiss, you the English, can come and make these inquiries, or we will make these inquiries for you. But there is a protocol that has to be followed. Serbian police, if they come to England to investigate a crime committed in Serbia, have no authority here. They can't make arrests. They can't go and knock on people's door and say, hey, we're the police. They're the police in Serbia, they're not the police in England. And vice versa. So the Swiss police can't go to Serbia and knock on doors and say, we are the Swiss police.
Can you knock on our doors?
I can now because I'm not a policeman. When I was approached by the insurers and asked, can you investigate the theft of the Picassos? I first got on a plane and flew to Germany to interview people at the museum who were the owners of the painting and who had arranged for the loan to Switzerland. I then got on a plane and went to Switzerland. Now, I didn't have to follow any protocol of having the prosecutor or the police in the country that I was visiting. I didn't need their permission to do that any more than the criminals, and this is the point. The criminals can come and commit a crime in one country. They get on a plane and they fly to another. They don't need anybody's permission to do that. They get on a plane and travel. The police in pursuit have to sit down and write reports and get the permission before they can get on a plane and go there and make those inquiries. So you can see that there are handicaps that regular law enforcement are restricted by. I don't have those restrictions, but when I go and knock on the door and somebody and say, you've got the painting I'm looking for, I can't arrest them. I have no power of arrest. I can't force an entry. Law enforcement can do all of that.
They can.
So if you want to have successful recoveries and successful prosecutions, you need to have an acceptance that there are different motives that drive different forms of the investigation. The motive for law enforcement is always going to be the detection of the crime and the arrest and prosecution of the criminals. The recovery of the stolen property, be it art or anything else, is secondary to those driving principles, what they are paid to do as law enforcement officers. And that's quite right. But when you come to things like art and antiques, it's a different commodity to other property that is stolen. If you have your computer stolen, sometimes people are quite happy to have had a computer stolen because they can turn to their insurance company and say, it's gone, here's the police reference number. They get paid out on the insurance and they go and buy the latest computer, so they've upgraded at the expense of the insurance company. That works quite well. If it's a painting that you've inherited and has been in your family for many years, or it has great sentimental value, so people who collect art will often want that object back when it's stolen. They don't want the insurance money, they want the object.
Little spider on a train. Don't be embarrassed, this happens all the time. This is a very traumatic moment to get everything coming back to you.
Yeah, but just find that stupid little... And it took so much.
Well, your mother gave that to you, so
Yeah.
That's important, isn't it?
I've got so much to look for. Such a stupid little thing, and I was always petrified of it. At least I've got one bed back. Sorry. The police reckoned they broke in about 3 days after we went on holiday, and they were in the house a few days. They took absolutely everything electrical. I asked them could I clean up the mess afterwards. I went into the understairs cupboard to get me over. They'd even taken that. Brings it all back. I never want to go through that sort of thing again.
The Serbian police, they have now a squad which is specialized for this kind of a crime.
Yes.
Your knowledge is invaluable. And do you have any idea about that, to train those people, that they are able to recognize certain things on their own country?
Well, the most important thing for any art squad in the world is actually, first and foremost, to be competent investigators, criminal investigators. And for a unit to be able to do that, you have to first and foremost, I even opened a tomb in Egypt whilst investigating some Egyptian antiquity looting. I was one of the first Western police officers to investigate crimes in China with the Chinese authorities. Los Angeles became known at one time as my other office because I was there so often. And I have, I've been undertaking these investigations and art recovery internationally now for many years. So of course there's information that I can give that would help. People who steal art and antiques and cultural property are not stealing the objects for their beauty. They're stealing objects for their value, for the money that they'll realize out of it, and they are dealt with and treated as another commodity. We've had instances where you've had fine art being used as a collateral exchange, a commodity exchange for drugs, in the same way as you'd say, there's so many bags of potato valued at so many bags of heroin. And that's how they deal with it.
Do you think you are going to come again to Serbia? Is there some more important paintings which are stolen?
I think that there is a lot more artwork in and around Serbia, in the Balkan region, and I think there's a very good chance I'll be in Serbia again.
You are now looking for which paintings in Serbia? It must be something. It must be. Tell me what you can.
Well, what I can say is that there is other artwork there, and I hope that this is going to help people to realize that the artwork cannot stay hidden forever. And
have a look. Look. Picasso ceramics.
Beautiful.
Can they be forged?
Yes. I dealt with one with a big forgery case where the potter was forging 17th century English Wealdenware pottery.
So
you can forge anything if you are proficient enough, if you're good enough.
Thank you very much. You have been talking to Ekskluzivno Mira Polak from National Television of Serbia.
And it's been my pleasure.
My pleasure too. Thank you.
Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty-night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you miss me while I'm